Hello again, and welcome to the Noble Father podcast. My name is Theophilus, and I am your host. Today is June the 3rd of 2024, and I just want to say how happy I am for you to join me on this podcast and this journey. This is a podcast where I share and talk about my feelings, my thoughts, and my experiences through life and through my own journey through fatherhood as well. And this week, and typically I talk about my week, and I talk about things that are happening in my life, the journey that I'm taking through Noble Father, being a father, and it's a wild journey. Last week I came about as close as I've ever been to calling it quits on the podcast, and on this whole journey, on this work. And it all came to a head, on Thursdays. Thursdays, if you're here for the first time, Noble Father is not just a podcast. It is also a Discord community. It is a premium community, a community that fathers invest in themselves to get a return on their investment, to get value from community. And these are well-intentioned fathers who are also on that road as well. This is a community about support, and guys always reach out, whatever they're going through, either through marriage, through relationship, through childhood struggles, emotional, mental struggles, physical struggles, recovery through addictions, spiritual trouble as well. And it's where you can find good community. And one of the things about being the founder and the main operator of this community is that sometimes in helping other people, I am not as sensitive to my desire or my need for help. And that came to a head on Thursday. And going into the meeting, I was filled with a lot of negativity. I was filled with the overwhelm, just the burden of this community. It was never meant to be something that I kept to myself or tried to spearhead by myself. I'm sure God never intended that as well. And I just got onto the call and I just asked the guys, tell me one thing negative about Noble Father. There is a hint of it in there where I wanted to improve on the craft. But there was also this piece of, hey, you haven't asked for help. Why are you not asking for help? And so some of the things that came up that day was that Thursday was the Thursday before I had to go up for a retreat. And I'm going to go about talking about the retreat in a bit here. But I want to talk about that meeting because some of the things that were said were if you don't tell others you need help, they won't know. And, I'm a great example of that. I'm a person who hides it very well, and I'm always very eager to help. I'm always first to jump on that and anticipate that somebody needs assistance, and, try to go above and beyond for them. And, it's interesting about human psychology is that, and I've tried to do I've tried to reconcile it in my own head. Those that are most willing to help others are probably the least likely to ask for help. And actually, the help that they help others with is actually the help that they themselves need the most. It's so interesting, and I guess I call it the Dr. Phil effect. When I say that, it's we're so eager to give advice to other people about their situations, but in reality, we're saying that advice to ourselves. We're the ones that most need to take that advice. And this podcast is one in which I've said that, in telling you, I am telling myself. I am learning those lessons myself. I am the least qualified person to be speaking onto these airwaves, onto the Noble Father podcast, to tell you what you should or should not do. In reality, I'm talking to myself. And, that was the thing is, in growing this community, because this is my business. This is all I do for work. on the off times that I have to do, certain things with a nonprofit. Noble Father is not a it is not a success if you ask somebody who is a secular entrepreneur, somebody who doesn't believe in God. They would tell you that, oh, you're not profitable and you are in the negative, and thus you are not a thriving business. And they're right. They are absolutely right. Noble Father right now, if I'm just giving you a ballpark, only pays me about $600 to $700 a month. And, some might ask, well, how are you surviving? If not for the nonprofit accounting for most of my salary, I would not be doing this anymore. That is why I'm so susceptible to the shiny objects in life. It's so easy for me to look at job postings or, go on Upwork to find coaching jobs. But yet at every turn, I'm always reminded that this work is important, is vitally important. And the champions and the guys that are in my group, man, they've been such an encouragement to me. They'll tell me things like, hey, don't forget why you're doing this, right? You're not here to mass produce something that is extremely palatable to people that they listen once and then they're done. You're in this to change lives. And they know, they know, they're like, hey, don't forget this guy who you told about, who told your story to, and went and told their superior officer that they no longer wanted to be a police officer, to be present at home and to build a business for themselves. Don't forget about this guy who came out of recovery and needed this work, needed the words that you shared in your podcast. Or, the mother who learned about the struggles of their son through your podcast. And it's I love those stories, and it's heartwarming for me. But there's a part of me that just, as an entrepreneur, I guess you just constant drive to want to continue to outperform. It goes back to the dish rack, the drying dish rack phase in my story in my life. And for those that don't know, my mother, I grew up doing dishes, right? Those are the chores that you'd normally do. And I'd always try to put the dishes in such a way that my mom would win my mom's approval. And every single time I would try to do it to the best of my ability. And my mom would always come down, come and look and inspect my work. And it would never be up to her, perfection. And she'd always, either give off a sigh or, not give me praise and just go straight into criticizing how we were putting the dishes on the dish rack. And, it's easy for a child like me to just take that and think that, I can never get anything right, never do anything right. And that also gets to the point of like, well, then why even bother starting, right? So I have a difficulty taking action to get started on something, and also see it through to the end, because I feel like I would mess it up, and the final product would just not be right. And this is something that I constantly struggle with. This comes up in everything that I do, and maybe this is a lesson for you as a father or as a mother, whoever it is that whoever it is that's listening to this, is like it'll always be subjectively wrong to somebody else, because somebody else will think that they should have done this or could have done this or could have done that and should have done that. And actually there is no perfect answer. And so, for me in this community, right, marketing it has been one of the difficulties, right? Because this is a business and I members are paying. It's hard for me to ask for help in that scenario, because, they're paying members. They should just be enjoying. And yet, and the guys are just absolutely amazing. They are so supportive of me, and they see the value. The investment, they've admitted the investment that they're putting in is less than what the value they're getting back in return. And something so good they know is that it's best to be shared. And there are people out there are fathers out there who need this community. And while I'm on this topic, right, I need your help. I would love your help. Is that if you know of any fathers out there who are struggling to find themselves, struggling to find the support they need, or need this support, please send them to Noble Father. This is a place where we can be ourselves and drop the mask and share and drop off the burden that we all share. Society will tell you that you need to suck it up and not be a little pussy and deal with it by yourself. In reality, we can't do it ourselves. This Noble Father project and this whole creation would not be able to grow if not for your help. And I'd love to enlist you to help us in that. And so, that Thursday came and went, and it was, I always find myself getting up to Thursdays, in a negative space. And as soon as we have the meetup, all that stuff evaporates, all that stuff disappears. And I'm reminded right away of how important having a space like that on Thursdays is. And now I'm more renewed. I'm renewed and revitalized to continue this work. So on Thursday, the meetup ended, and the very next day, we were going to go up to a men's retreat for our church called Wild Man. Just about an hour and a half away from here, 2 hours away. And it was just a good time to disconnect. And so we had about, we were supposed to have 86 guys up there. A little camping spot with a cabin. And, we were going to tent. We were tent camping. And, about 70 or so guys came out. Some couldn't make it, and last minute dropouts and what have you. And it was exactly what I needed. All the things that the guys were stirring in me and saying, hey, you need to ask for help. Enlist us. We can help you grow this community. It was everything I needed on this retreat. The theme of the retreat was uncivilized. What does it mean to be uncivilized? And, how we were meant to be pioneers. We are, we should be uncivilized to this society and the lies that it tells us and the norms that it has for us, and, things that, try to make palatable for us to digest, and they have, their reasonings for, why we should be, should be accepting of these things. In reality, that life is not, our lives are not meant to be lived that way. And it was such a good time away. The highlight of my trip really was, from a father's perspective, my son. I got to bring my son along with me, and this was his second Wild Man together. The first Wild Man last year. One of the boys at our camp, young leaders in our group, gifted a knife to my son, and my son just whittled away that Wild Man. He just was going around just sharpening sticks, and you got to see the kind of man he was growing up to be. And especially this past weekend, I got to see him grow up. Got to see him become, even a year from the last retreat till now, just how far he's come in his development. And I'll never get this scene out of my head. And it was really the highlight of it. I wish I had taken a picture of it. Part of me wishes I took a picture of it, but then there's another part of me that's happy that I was in the moment, just watching him and just appreciating him. So because we had, it was really wet weather. It was coming down. We had some good weather, starting out. Then, as Saturday rolled around, it started to really come down. And, my son was, busy poking fires and, catching toads and what have you. And near the, as the sun was going down, most of the men were all huddled, under shade. Nobody really wanted to get wet. And so they were just, either playing board games or having conversations with their fellow man. And I remember there was nobody else on the beach. The fire was smoking, and And all I saw off in the distance was my son on the dock, all by himself in his black hoodie and his black pants rolled up. And he was barefoot, casting a fishing rod. And he was soaking wet because he'd been out in the rain the whole day. He hadn't taken any rest. He was the true wild man. And just seeing him out there casting a fishing rod all by himself in the rain. And not a care in the world. Just didn't care. And just watching him, just casting this fishing rod, pulling it in, casting the fishing rod. And it really put in my heart the joy of being a father. You could be anybody else on that retreat watching my son Davian doing that. And, just smile and, chuckle. But for me, it was like this deep thing in my heart. Like, this is a memory I'm going to hold forever. And it reminded me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And the opportunities that this journey affords us to be able to do. And it was amazing. God met me out there. There's a few things that, he talked to me about, our pastor was sharing about, while we were there. And, this notion that we are in the wilderness before we find our way to our calling, and to where we're to go. And, pastor gave, 3 very, spot on examples. Adam was created in the wild before he was led and invited to the Garden of Eden, right? To paradise, right? John, came from the wild, right? He was, wearing loincloths and sheep's clothing and eating locusts and honey. And, he came with a message of God, of God's love, right? Jesus led into the wilderness, right? To be treated, to be tested by the devil. It made me think of the Noble Father journey of this creation, right? I was led through my own prodigal son journey through the difficulties in the wilderness, and now to be speaking to the lives of fathers. It was spot on. And to be a pioneer, to be uncivilized, right? That's the whole point of the retreat, the theme of it. He shared a verse in Hebrews 11:38 that says, "Of whom the world was not worthy." Of whom the world was not worthy. That was a picture of my son, right, out there. My role and in the main operator of Noble Father, right? This work that we're doing is not worthy of this world. That's not boasting of me. That's boasting of God, right? The world would never acknowledge that this is good. And this work is something that probably won't get viral. People don't look highly upon that, right? And so, this reminder that I was in the wilderness, and this is a slow beginning. This is a slow journey. And what's crazy to me is that, there's this book that I brought up there, and this book is called His Eye is on the Sparrow. And there's this page in there. Actually, I want to find it because this is something worthy of sharing for sure. As I was going through my weekend there, I was thinking, like I told you, I came as close as I've ever been to wanting to get rid, to stop this journey and to say, to hell with it. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is not fruitful by any means. The return on investment of what I've given, the blood, sweat, and tears that I've poured into Noble Father, I hadn't seen, the return on. And one of the dads in my group, Nate, said, the most negative thing about this is I know what you've put in and I know what you've given. And yet I know that something like this, you will never be adequately compensated for. And that's really how I've been feeling, in the context of that is, I'd been looking at a second vehicle, looking at making a purchase. And our finances are not at the place where I could make that and swing that. And it's really hard to really let it go and trust the Lord and to give it up. Because there's things that I wanted to do with my son, like I'm not with my daughter as well. I'm not promised tomorrow. I'm not promised a year from now. And do I want to get to that place and regret it, right? If God takes me away a year from now and I never got to do that, I would go to my grave with regret in my heart. And what would be the only thing holding me back from that? Something super inconsequential like money. Inconsequential in the sense of of its meaning. Money is a construct. Yeah, we all need it. But to be held up by the finances, is something that really deeply pains me. And it's something that I've learned to really let go of and entrust to God, because I can't hold on to these things, and it's not for me to hold on to. And so, as I was out there, and struggling and hurting and feeling like this is such a waste of time for all the work that I'm putting in. I feel like I'm not being compensated, let's just say financially, for it. All the things that I put in, the messages that I've sent out, hundreds of them that, people are, saying they're interested, and then they don't show up, or, yes, I'm interested. And I send them the link, and then they don't get themselves into the server, or they say, yeah, I'm going to show up to the meetup, and don't show up when the time comes. Incredibly disheartening. And, that's also a return that I don't see. And that's been very difficult. But in Zechariah 4, verse 10 says, do not despise these small beginnings. And when I read that, it was quite amazing. And this is the page that I'm talking about. Do not despise these small beginnings. And it's just this bird, right? Little red bird sitting on top of a tree and just looking out. I feel like that. I feel like that little bird. But as I was there, just, hey, I'm sowing the right seeds, and it's only a matter of time before this absolutely blows up. And, all I have to do really is trust in the Lord and trust that his timing is right. It's difficult to stomach that you couldn't afford this purchase. But there is a reason, and there's a way, and I just need to trust the Lord. The vision that he's given me for Noble Father to one day have retreats, that's a lesson in stewardship, right? If we ever have that, if we ever have a retreat site, there is going to come a day where somebody has to overlook that and has to be a leader in how we get to that place. And if we're not ready right now in our scarcity, we will not be ready in our abundance. Right? If God entrusts us with very little right now, and we don't steward that well, how can God give us more? How can God trust us with more? That is a lesson for me, is that if I can't even moderate and control a group of about 30 fathers in the Discord, how can I moderate 300? How can I moderate 3,000? How can I moderate 30,000? There's just no possible way. And so these journeys, these lessons along the way are part of that journey and part of that discovery. And I must be okay and willing to be patient, to let this grow slowly and organically in God's timing, trusting in his provision for us. And so, I got plenty of things to look forward to. I got plenty of things to keep on my plate. The retreat is coming up. August 1st to 5th, it's coming up. And there's a lot. There's a lot to prepare. There's a lot of things to answer. Figuring out how to enlist the help of my members to get the word out. They didn't even know. Some of them didn't even know if it was okay to share the membership with other people, which goes back to me as the leader. That was on you, Theo. You have that responsibility. You were expecting this to grow, yet you forgot to enlist the help of your fathers. You tried to do this all by yourself, and where did that get you? It got you to the point of wanting to close down this community. It got you to the point of wanting to turn it all off and call it, right? And that's not a sustainable way to build this community. And so I've taken that lesson. I've given it to God. And if you remember with our community, and I ask for forgiveness, I truly ask for your forgiveness for not leading well. This is a lesson that I'm taking, and I'm learning, and I'm growing, and I'm an imperfect person, just like I always say on this podcast. But I do need your help. So if you're able to, feel free to share this episode with them, share my podcast with them. That's free. Share our Discord community with them as well. If you don't know what that means, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to explain to you. Discord is a messaging app, and it allows us to do our meetups on Thursdays, do our Bible studies on Wednesdays, do our accountability check-in calls every month. And it's just a platform to really be in community. And I know how much it benefited me this past Thursday, and it's benefited so many fathers as well. And so if that fits you, or your mother, fathers that could benefit from this, please share it with them. It is really a pure and intentional space, and I can't grow this without you. And so I really need your help. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Remember that we are not promised tomorrow, so be present and stay noble. Thank you. Bye for now.